normalization, you can flip to that page, normalization.
Hey ladies.
This is a word you're going to hear from the lead teachers. It's something that we were really trained on how to achieve. We won't use those terms too much around parents because when they hear normalization, they think if a classroom's not normalized, they're not normal. But that's not true. This is just a term that Maria Montessori used. I don't believe it was her word. She borrowed it from the field of anthropology. We always have to remember that, like, even though she developed this curriculum, she used a lot of other people's ideas. She kind of brought the best of the best together.
Yeah.
So she used this this term. Just kind of means you're a functioning part of the society. So it doesn't mean perfect. It doesn't mean the same. It doesn't mean every day is going to look identical. It just means it's kind of like just the normal world. She used this term normalization to distinguish one of the processes that she saw in the work with children at her school in Rome. This process, the process of normalization, occurs when development is proceeding normally. She used the word normalization so that people would think that these qualities belong to all children and were not something special just for a few. So, normalization, that's just, again, this is something we're trying to achieve. About what time of the year do you think your classes get normalized, teachers? Sometimes March.
I think mid-October would be reasonable.
I don't know, by December.
End of October.
January.
February, March.
Should be, yeah, but it should be by October.
October. Okay.
I think it should be by October.
And also, does it vary year to year?
I mean, every year is different.
Every year is different.
But I
Yeah.
think mostly it should be by October.
Easier.
Okay.
The older children come back.
Probably depends on how many older children you have, how many 3-year-olds you have,
Right.
that sort of thing.
February and March.
They said January?
January, February, March.
January, you should be like
Very
model,
Yeah.
yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Okay,
Because it
so,
depends on the children comes in.
again,
They
normalization
get older.
doesn't mean that
As
the
they get
classroom is silent and everybody's just working independently. That's not normalization. It's actually this graph, and we're gonna jump around here. It's this graph, if you can see. It kind of models like our day. So at the beginning, we're kind of sluggish. We're just getting going. That's the bottom of the graph here. And then, a child, as they move through the classroom during the morning, they get a little more engaged. And they kind of come to this peak at 2 where they're kind of working good and everything's going great. And then they dip, and that's something that Angelina mentioned, false fatigue. This might be around snack time, or just where they've kind of lost interest. And then it kind of revs back up again, and they're working and they're concentrating, and it's a nice, I always like to call it a working classroom, not just silent, but things are just happening. And then it dips again. And this would be a normalized class. So these dips are normal. And when we're trying to achieve normalizations, there's 3 levels. So the first one is glimmerings. These are just times probably in late September, early October, where you're starting to see just little bits of normalization. Like, wow, that day went great. And the next day might be something different. But you saw that little glimmering. And then you see appear and disappear. So it's happening more regularly. Like maybe 3 out of the 5 days, your classroom went really well during the work time. And then we get to consistent, and that's where we're really normalized. So how do you know you're normalized? Your classroom is normalized. Number 1, you see concentration. You see children working. You see a love of work. They're engaged. If they are bored and the same work has been out for 4 weeks, they're not going to love to work. So seeing that love of work. Self-discipline and socialization. So again, real society doesn't look like people working silently with their head down. When students are sitting still and quiet and being obedient, they're missing out on social skills or what it's like to be in society. So make sure that they're able to have those conversations. And again, we're not interrupting someone's work, but if they're working in small groups or if they're working in practical life, I mean, they should be able to have a little conversation, you know, with their friend. And then how do we get normalization? That's at the bottom. It comes through, number one, preparation of the environment, making sure it's beautiful and ready and engaging. Number two, consistency, just with those ground rules. And hopefully with the parents bringing their children on a consistent basis. And then it just takes time. Not sure why I put this here. It probably should have been back at the beginning, but I think we kind of covered it when we talked about how we want, what roles we want people to do as far as like how do we get our prepared environment to look the way that we want. So you can review this, but I think we actually already covered it as far as how do we want the room set up, and just to make sure that you understand how your room is set up and what the expectations are as far as what needs to be replenished and who's going to do that. One word on cutting. We have a lot of, this is a really good example here. We have a lot of, I don't know what you call it, activities that require tracing. Don't blame your lead teacher when basically she says it's not, we got to get more precise. We are trying to show the children like what the actual shape or continent or whatever is. So we're going to do the best we can to trace perfectly. So taking your time and and tracing the puzzle pieces or whatever it is, and then if we do any cutting for our lead teachers, that we're like really being precise. And it might just seem like we're anal, but that's just the way that this curriculum is. So when you're like cutting a circle, making sure it's not like a multi-edged,
Not a stop sign?
not a stop sign or something like, we want that curve, we want that perfect curve, and it's better for you to just take your time and do it that way than rush through. Yes.
And then with the tracing too, is that that when they're tracing, we've noticed sometimes they might skip and then all of a sudden there's two lines. So then that's a little confusing to the children that are doing push pinning. So
Like
if
there's
it's-
a gap or something?
there's a gap, not
Yeah.
even just a gap, it's like they might have moved it, then there's two lines and they're not knowing which one they're doing.
Yeah.
And so we just need to concentrate. If that's
Yeah.
a mishap, just throw it away, because with the kids
Yeah.
doing it, they're gonna push pin both lines,
Right.
and we've noticed that.
And they'll notice. They want, and so we want to be consistent, and we want, we just want to be precise. So, if you're not sure, ask your teacher. Like, don't be offended if she's like, that's a particular thing that's not. It's not just our teachers that are particular. This is like all Montessori classrooms are like this. So, we're just trying to be as accurate as possible. Like with the maps, we want the continent as accurate as possible, shapes as accurate as possible.
I kind of brought your name in at the lead teacher meeting. Well, no, I said me and you both, the ideal of going around the circle, on the circle, not the jigger,
Yeah, and it takes
It's hard.
It takes, just like everything, it takes practice, and
It's your husband.
Oh, the bathroom. I don't know. Okay, so we'll breeze through that daily maintenance checklist. I think you guys are gonna know. Okay, so the remainder of this training is honestly, it's like kind of like little bits and pieces that I picked up from this training that I just thought were like kind of aha moments for me, and maybe they're not for you, but maybe they are. So we'll go through them. So art. Montessori said art should be inspiration, not imitation. And I'm going to stand firm on that. There's two components of Montessori art. There are techniques we have to learn. So there's a Montessori art curriculum, and I printed everybody out a new binder because I think we were all missing our art manual. So I purchased that from MMTC and printed a copy for everyone. And there are definite art techniques that we're teaching children. Intro to cutting, intro to gluing, and intro to all these things. What are some other ones? Like color mixing, different things like that. Okay, Okay, so those are techniques, those are things we're teaching them. We don't expect them to be perfect, or it's a practice.